All right, it looks like we are live and welcome everybody to Standing for Truth. Guys, this is just going to be a short video that I wanted to put out pertaining to the Endogenous Retrovirus Handbook, dismantling the best evidence for common descent. So we got it here. The wait is over. This is the black and white version. You can also get it, as you can see, in the on the main website. Guys, if you go to the main website, the Endogenous Retrovirus Handbook, and just one click will take you to the Amazon page where you can get the colored version or the black and white version. Now, this is a book you're not going to want to miss out on. It completely dismantles endogenous retroviruses as evidence for common descent. It's 170 pages roughly. It's the most comprehensive response that you are going to find available dealing with this specific argument. I also deal with ALU sequences and these other classes of retrotransposons as well. Now, I want to kind of just go over the some of the highlights in the book itself, and how you're going to find the book broken down is in chapter 1. Okay, and I purposely structured this book in a way that will allow the reader, okay, as they make their way to chapter 4. Chapter 4 is by far the longest chapter in the book. It's comprehensive. There are countless technical papers from the scientific literature that confirm exactly what I'm saying, confirm the arguments that I'm putting forth. And you guys are going to be fascinated, okay? I find it amazing that the so-called best lines of evidence for common descent, universal common ancestry, okay, actually turn out to be some of the greatest lines of evidence for separate ancestry and biblical creation. As a matter of fact, what you are going to find throughout this book is that what we now know in 2022 about these endogenous retroviral-like sequences is a confirmed prediction and confirmed expectations from the intelligent design position, the separate ancestry model. So chapter 1, you're going to get all the important details. What is an endogenous retrovirus? What is a retrovirus? You're going to get some important definitions, the details that are going to be necessary to kind of lay out the foundation for the rest of the book. So even if you're somebody who's just getting into this topic and you've never even heard of endogenous retroviruses before, chapter 1 is structured. I wrote it specifically to give you all the necessary information, the definitions, the details, and the argument itself. So in chapter 1, I lay out the argument that is put forth by the common descent proponents, the defenders of fish to fisherman evolution, and I lay it out as best as possible. And the argument for endogenous retroviruses is multi-layered. So in that chapter, I go through all of the reasons why evolutionists and evolutionary scientists look to endogenous retroviruses, shared ERV-like sequences between various creatures, including humans and chimpanzees, as a so-called evidence for common ancestry. Then chapter 2 is important because we get into the design diversity hypothesis. The model that if you've been following this channel, you understand that we put forth the important model that suggests God would have front-loaded the original created archetypes with pre-existing and beneficial genetic diversity, okay? Pre-existing heterozygosity, a state of DNA diversity. But we hypothesize that God would have also front-loaded the original created kinds with various classes of variation-inducing genetic elements and essentially just created units of DNA function. And one of these interesting classes of functional DNA elements would be the ERV sequences. So chapter 2 is important to kind of give the reader a comprehensive explanation for what the design diversity model is and what we would predict or expect to find if this hypothesis were true. And before we do get into chapter 4, where we're going to get the reader is going to be presented with overwhelming, undeniable evidence for design diversity and exactly why shared ERV sequences between various creatures is best explained by common design, common genomic archetypes. And chapter 3 is interesting because we do get into the agnostic lines of evidence, the non-discriminatory lines of evidence, right? Nested hierarchical patterns, homology, and chapter 3 is to show the reader and the critic as well that if design diversity is true, if common descent is true, then shared endogenous retroviral like sequences are expected, because if they really are created units of DNA function, then the reason why they are shared is due to common design, since they are there for a purpose, they have functional roles, and not just any functional roles, but essential. And you're going to see that throughout the book, especially in chapter 4. I completely dismantle this argument from co-option or what a lot of these technical papers will put forth as selective pressures, engines of evolution. No, it doesn't work, because I demonstrate right from the primary source data. Okay. It's very comprehensive as to why these various functional roles, it's not just one or two, there are numerous functional roles, and they are, in a sense, irreducibly complex. These roles, many of these roles, without them, without the ERV sequences, we wouldn't exist. We wouldn't exist. So that's all I'm going to say for now about that chapter. But it really digs deep. It leaves no stone unturned. And at the same time, I refute all the typical objections to what I'm saying. And then, of course, we get a nice conclusion that kind of sums everything up. So you're going to be looking at about 170 pages. And the full color version is nice because Benjamin did a fantastic job designing this cover, as well as he's done with many of our other covers and custom images in the past. So in the full color version, you're going to get some pretty cool custom images that we've laid out throughout the book. And this is the kind of book that you're definitely going to want, especially as a creationist. You're going to want this in your collection, because currently this is the number one line of evidence that the evolutionists are looking to in terms of common descent. Okay, so I also address, though, this argument, and I address it in detail, that says it's not only about the nested hierarchical patterns in the ERV sequences themselves, but it's also about the mutagenic discrepancies, or the so-called mutations, the DNA differences within the ERV structure itself, within the properties of the ERV. For example, the LTRs. On either side of the ERV element, you have LTRs, which stands for long terminal repeats. Okay, the mutations in these long terminal repeats are looked at, analyzed, they've built family trees, and apparently there are nested hierarchical patterns in not only the ERV element, but also the structure of the ERV element or the properties of it. So I get into that, and in explaining why that is the case and why common descent does not best explain these observations, I do make some novel testable predictions. So I do challenge the critics, those that want to critique this book and reject its conclusions, to make better testable predictions, and thus a more superior model. I also go into this idea of fixed versus unfixed endogenous retroviral-like sequences and elements. And you are going to see novel predictions there as well in terms of how we can differentiate between that which may be a design unit of DNA function or that which may be a legit insertion. Because you're going to see throughout this book that the similarities that these endogenous retroviral-like sequences have to exogenous retroviruses, extant retroviruses like HIV, are necessary to perform many of their functional roles. Two that you'll see throughout this book have to do with tumor suppression and antiviral protection. These ERV sequences and elements throughout the genome act as antiviral protectors. They're like antiviral programs. It's fascinating design evidence for forward thinking, which points us back to the forward thinker. But you are going to find that these similarities that these ERV sequences have to exogenous retroviruses, not endogenous, but exogenous retroviruses, again, like HIV, these are necessary for them to perform their functional roles. It's like guerrilla warfare, okay? What these ERV sequences are doing in fighting off these viral invasions, preventing them from happening in the first place, is through something called viral mimicry. And guys, you will be fascinated reading through this book and just really digging deep into the scientific literature and seeing directly from the primary source data why the argument from endogenous retroviruses for common descent really does not work. And when it comes to this one specific functional role, you are going to see, as I pointed out, exactly why we can make a prediction based on fixed versus unfixed ERV sequences, okay? And that is going to be something that I think you guys are going to find very interesting. And to kind of break it down here just a little bit, is the fact that if one of their functional roles is to protect from from the invasion of viruses and parasites, well, we do know that we, on a daily basis, we get a lot of DNA breaks, a lot of mutations that we have these DNA repair enzymes fixing. But we, of course, know that even with these many amazingly complicated DNA repair enzymes doing the amazing job that they were designed to do, we do know that mutations happen, and a lot of mutations happen in the somatic cell lines. Primarily, we die due to mutation accumulation, and some of those mutations in the germ cell lines are passed on. Okay, so obviously the DNA repair enzymes are not doing their job perfectly. And so there is a good reason to believe that one of the many functional roles of these endogenous retroviral-like sequences and elements do in terms of protecting the genomes of living organisms, acting in the immune system, acting as antiviral protectors. The fact is, they may not do their job perfectly. We live in a fallen world, right? And mutations accumulate, and retroviruses, unfortunately, do make their way in. And if they do make their way in to a germ cell, okay, a reproductive cell, and they manage to be passed on vertically rather than horizontally, okay, then we may be looking at what would be called an unfixed ERV. That may be the result of an insertion, but you'll see throughout this book exactly how to differentiate between that, which would be rare, non-functional, disease-causing, and that which is fixed, that which is beneficial, that which is necessary to sustain healthy life processes in the cell, that which is evidence for forward thinking, pointing us back to the forward thinker. So of course I touch on that in great detail. And why am I saying all this? Because I want to show you that this book really does leave no stone unturned. In studying in great detail the scientific literature and looking at the primary source data, I have discovered just how amazing the evidence, just how overwhelming the evidence really is for common design and for separate ancestry, even looking at the technical literature as it applies to endogenous retroviruses. Okay, you guys better be ready to be amazed. And the next time an evolutionist brings up ERVs as evidence for evolution, you make sure you let them know about this book. Okay. Another thing that I cover in good detail is these ALU or ALU DNA sequences. Okay. And again, you are going to be fascinated to see that we have functional role after functional role and technical paper after technical paper documenting more and more evidence for common design and separate ancestry. Okay. And this is just kind of a sneak peek into what you're going to see in this book. So anyways, I'm going to wind it down here, guys. This is just to kind of let everybody know that the Endogenous Retrovirus Handbook, Dismantling the Best Evidence for Common Descent, is now available. You can go, you can purchase it directly through the website. This will, just a click away, will take you exactly where you got to go on Amazon. I've got the links in the description box. And also, please, guys, if you get the book, if you read the book and you like the book, please leave us a review, because reviews are incredibly helpful. And I want to see your feedback. When it comes to the critics, there are many arguments that I have anticipated. And therefore, in the coming months, the objections, the criticisms, the so-called counters that are put forth by the defenders of evolution, I will be dealing with, and I will be collecting them, and just kind of showing everybody that there is no way out of the conclusions made in this book. Okay. The critics are going to have to put forth better testable predictions and a more superior model, and whatever criticisms or objections that they put forth, I'll be dealing with them probably in written form and video form. And eventually, when I have enough, I'll probably make an updated version of this where we have an appendix just dealing with the critics. Although most of what you're going to find in terms of objections are actually anticipated, predicted, and dealt with right in the book, or dealt with in a technical paper or a reference that that is in the book, that I've put in the book, that I expect a lot of the critics to unfortunately not go and look at. And so this is going to be a lot of fun, guys. And again, I appreciate all the support. You guys are the life and blood of this channel. And we have a lot to look forward to. We have a lot to look forward to. Today, we have a debate between Professor David McQueen and Luca Medugno on the heat problem. And in a couple days, we've got the big rematch between Dr. Dino and James W., because the evolution debate challenge does continue. Okay, well, that being said, thank you so much, guys. Again, the links are in the description box for the Endogenous Retrovirus Handbook. I've got it right here. Again, I want to thank Benjamin for an awesome cover. And this is the kind of book that you're definitely going to want to recommend to anybody who's interested in the creation versus evolution, the ancestry topic. So that being said, thank you everybody for watching this video. Please pass it around, and Standing for Truth is out. God bless all.